everyone, and welcome to the Koala Club podcast, a podcast made by and for international students in Australia. I am Kevin.
And I am Trang, and we talk about everything education, work, and lifestyle for overseas students in Australia. Happy New Year, guys! Welcome back to the first episode of 2022. We hope you've had a wonderful break and you've been all safe and well. How are you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm good, Chang. Happy New Year, guys. Yeah, it's our first episode back in 2022. It's been, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks from last episode air? Well, it was aired Christmas Eve, so 2 or 3 weeks. I think we kind of forgot to let our listeners know when we're going to be back, but nonetheless, we're back now, so...
Yep, we're back with another informative episode for you guys. So today we're going to talk about accommodation options for international students. This is, I guess, a very relevant topic right now because a lot of international students are beginning to prepare to come to Australia for their studies. So we thought this episode might be useful for you guys. So Kevin, why don't you kick us off with what is the first option for accommodation for international students?
Yeah, sure. So the first options for international students is through Homestay. So this one is particularly interesting for me because I used to live in a homestay myself. So what is Homestay really? So Homestay basically just means that you get to stay with a family, an Australian family. They could be from backgrounds all over the world, but at the moment they're living in Australia. It is a must-have, like it's a requirement for under 18 students because the host family you stay with, they will take on the role of the carer for you, like legally. So that's why you need to stay with a homestay if you're under 18s. It is a really good options for cultural experience because, like I said, the hosts are Aussie, but originally they can be from different countries, like from Asia, European, or other countries. With a homestay, right? So you have a different meals options, as in you either have full meals, like 3 meals per day. They can prepare for you breakfast, lunch, dinner, or you can just have dinner and breakfast only. And there's an option where you opt for no meals at all, as in you cook your own meal, you cook your own food, but that is for over 18 only, over 18 years old students. We're gonna have a link in the show notes so you can check this out. And as for my own experience before, so I came to Australia when I was 15 years old. So I stayed with my host family for probably about 3 years. There was a full meals option, but I wasn't aware of. So I have the dinner plus breakfast, but then I prepare my own lunch or I buy my own lunch in school. And my host family is very nice lady with a few kids. She's from Chile originally. I had a really great fun staying with them because like I get to experience the culture. I get to learn a little bit of Spanish, and I got to try a lot of these Latin food, like really spicy food or really from Chile. So for me, it's really fun and really interesting experience for me for that 3 years.
I think a lot of students would think homestay is like staying with a family and they're basically sort of like living with another set of mum and dad. So maybe a few students would think that maybe independence-wise, maybe you wouldn't be fully independent and you would still have that family, I guess, controlling like whether you go out or not and what time you come back home at night. So did you experience that, or is that like a common myth that people think about homestay?
Yes and no. Like, yes, a lot of times it did feel like you're living with another set of parents, because technically they are your carer, legal carer. So, for example, well, I was a teenager, so I was pretty silly and and could be stupid sometimes. So a lot of the time, like before when I was staying with her, I like went out either to friends or partying until very late or and then end up staying over at a friend's house because there's no bus or train, and I forgot to let her know. Or just didn't think of it, and I got like kind of a skull lesson actually. Like just text me like after a couple of times like, hey, we need to talk. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good, and yeah, but it's more like a reminder, like, hey, like we need to know where you are, and if you're gonna stay over at a friend's house, you need to let me know because I need to make sure that you are safe and that you're okay. So it just comes back to ultimately the purpose of it is to keep you safe and to make sure you have a good time with your host family and you don't have any trouble like with the law, like say if you don't get arrested or you don't have anything
Mm.
that could affect your study negatively. It has the benefits to us in because they acting as your legal care, as in similar to your parents. They also will teach you or guide you on life, on what you need. Because be honest, if we under 18, we don't know much about life or about how to deal with situations or how to just interact with people. And that's where your host family come in, and they kind of guide you. They be the parents there that you need. They are the guidance that you don't have if you live by yourself outside. I would say overall it is a very positive experience for me to learn these either harsh lessons that I need to respect the host family or I need to follow their guidance because most of the time they are right about situations.
Mm. Yeah, and especially because you're living in a new country too, there are so many things you don't know. So having that family there to support you and have your back is really important. And I guess to be a homestay provider, you have to go through rigorous checks, right, by the government, and you need to like the government would check your background and stuff, so to
Yes.
make sure that you're a good person and you can provide that homestay service. So
Yes.
I think people can be reassured that if they pick a homestay, it would be someone that's like reliable and trustworthy and
Yes.
they can provide that good service and they actually care for you too.
Yes, exactly. Like I can actually say this from personal experience because when we first got our own place, me and my wife, probably about 3 years ago, we did actually try to apply for being a homestay. The process is quite vigorously, like the process is quite strict. Like you have to
Mm.
fill out a lot of information about yourself, about your family members, about your household members, and then your income and whatnot, and what do you do. And then if you got past that route, the university or the organization will get in touch with you to schedule like an inspection where they will go to your house or your place, and then they inspect the room you're gonna rent out for the students, and then they inspect the overall area. Is a living room all right? Is a kitchen have enough appliance and stuff like that? And they talk with you
Mm.
for like a good half an hour to really get to know you, like where you from, what do you do, what's your background. So yeah, it's a really strict process to make sure the host family are good people and can provide the students with the most pleasant experience as possible during their stay.
Mm, yeah, so it's not like anyone can be a homestay
No,
provider.
no. If you
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like I'm homeless, or if I got a spare
Criminal history or
space
something.
in my living room, I put curtains over it. No, no.
Yep.
Yeah, there's really strict standards that you have to follow.
Mm. Yeah. So how did you apply to that homestay? Was it through the high school you went to, or is there like I guess an organization where you can
Mm.
put in your interest and then they match you with the homestay provider?
Yeah, I did apply through my high school, but when I went to high school called Taylor's College in Sydney, and that school is mainly for international students. Most of them are international students. So I believe the organization behind the school called Study Group, and I believe they are the one that organize all the homestay options and arrangements for students. So when I got offered later to go to study high school in this school, then that group also organized my yeah, my arrangement for homestay. They will have a form so you fill out like what's your preference, you know? Are they like you either prefer homestay close to school or you don't really mind the distance, or if you prefer homestay say with pets or no pets, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's really a lot of options you can take to make sure the homestay and yourself really suit each other.
Yeah, so you can really tailor it.
We're gonna have a link, to homestaynetwork.org. It's a organization that partner with a lot of universities where they contract out this, to that organization. So our listeners can check it out as well.
Yeah, and I think some similarly to your high school, some universities do run their own homestay program where they match the student with the families. But I think some unis go through that network, the homestay network that we'll post a link to.
Yes, and I think even now it's more of a vigorous process to just make sure the student and homestay click in the first time. Because when I went to high school, I remember myself, I stayed with that homestay for like 3 years until I moved out. But I saw a lot of my friends who just stay with a homestay for a month and then say, no, I don't really like this family, or we're not suited to each other, and then they move on. They have to, the school or the organization have to find another homestay for them. I believe that costs them as well, but yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of costs, so what are the costs like if you go through homestay?
Yeah, so the cost is, well, this placement fee, as in the upfront fee that you as a student pay for the organization to match you with a host family. And then, well, that fees is not really a lot. We're gonna link the pricing in Sydney as for your reference, so the listeners can, check it out in the Homestay Network. For the renting itself, the cost range from anywhere between $200 to $400 a week, depending on the locations. And by locations, I mean the cities in Australia. So I believe in Sydney, it would be the most expensive. It depends on where the host located in which cities. The cost may differ a little bit, and it also depends on the meal options you opt in. There's about $20 difference really if you opt for 3 meals. So like if you in for 2 meals, I think for example you pay $3.30, and then if you opt for 3 meals, full meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you opt for is $3.50 per week. So like $20 difference. So back then, if I knew it, I would just like, yep, please give me the 3 meals, because I remember I have to go to Woolies or Coles every week to buy this, and I was a student, quite broke as well, so I bought all this, little sandwich with a slice of cheese and maybe a ham, and put it together, and I have that for lunch for like almost every day for like 1.5 years, and I really got sick of it.
Oh, so speaking of meals, this might be a slight diversion to what you're talking about cost, but like, say in the homestay and they've got their cupboard of snacks and everything, are you free to access that, or is that just
Yeah.
theirs and you don't touch it and you have your own area in the cupboard?
Yeah, no, they have they have to provide you with fruits, like little snack and fruits. So like I believe they have a requirements from these organizations that the homestay has to provide at least 2 pieces of fruit per day, either banana or orange or whatever. And then for breakfast, they have cereals, they have eggs, they have milk. Like you can it's quite flexible, right? So when I'm there was nothing like this snack you can't touch. More like if you see some snack like chips, whatever, whoever bought it, because it could maybe the parents didn't buy it, but her kids bought it, for example, and her kids teenager. So the kids that didn't have responsibility to look after me. So more like when you see something that you're not sure whose is this, you should ask. Like I should ask her, like, hey, I saw it, can I have? I didn't eat a lot of snack, but if I did, I kind of just go ahead and bought it myself, because I just feel a little bit shy to go and say, hey, can I eat this snack? So what if they say no? What if they say? What if she said, nope? That needs to be super awkward.
You move on.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, but it's more like a common sense,
Mm,
respect other space and other properties. Just go ask, if you're not sure.
mm. Yep. Okay, sorry. Back to costs.
Yeah, that's okay. Oh, and one of the big factor cost as well is whether the room is a share room or private room as well. Yeah, I was staying in a private room. At the moment, I wasn't really aware there was a share option. The cost is probably not much. My preference, I think you should opt for the private room because you got your own space, and you just go to a completely foreign country. You kind of need space to adjust for yourself. And if you go straight into a share room, yeah, it's probably could work out as well because you get to learn from your roommate cultural experience as well. But I would argue that even coming to Australia, you got a lot to learn about Australian culture in your school and outside in social life and such. So I reckon for me to have a private space for myself better that way. The fee normally would include for the meals, for the room itself, accommodations, for utilities, internet. So like you don't have to pay, their water, their electricity. The host family pay all that, and also they must have internet option for you. So they must have some sort of internet, either Wi-Fi or hotspot, but normally Wi-Fi. So they have to make sure that you got internet access and do your homework and do your study or something.
Mm. Yeah, and I think another factor determining what the cost would be is your age. So if you're over or under 18, that would determine the price of the room of homestay. And I guess that leads us on to the next accommodation option, which is for over 18s. And I think this is a
Mm.
more common option that international students who are over 18 pick, which is to rent privately. So, as the name suggests, it's when you just rent a room privately on the rental market in Australia, in the city where you're studying. So, this is when you could share a room or share a house or share an apartment with other
Mm.
students or other working adults. And it's a great way to be fully independent. You cook your own meals, you do your
Yeah,
own laundry, you basically determine your time, what time you get home, what time you leave the house,
you have
what you
total
cook.
freedom.
Yep, it's total freedom. So
Exactly.
I think that's why it's so attractive for international students who come to Australia because they've been living with their parents for 18 years. They come
Mm.
to Australia and they get to fully experience this freedom.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, I think that's my personal experience too. Because I did stay at a boarding house, they call it here. So I guess, yeah, so the boarding house and the special student accommodation falls into this category of private rental. And I think a boarding house is basically a house with lots of rooms for students to rent out, and they actually have to follow some of the guidelines and follow some of the rules, as in like the house must be like maintained well and have all these facilities. So it's I guess a hybrid between a private
Mm.
room and the homestay.
So when you came to Australia, your first place is you stay at a boarding house, and so who owns this boarding house? Like who operate this boarding house?
So it's a private owner. So it's
Oh,
as
okay.
if you would own like a big house,
Yep.
and then you apply to I guess the authority to make it a boarding house,
Yeah. Right.
and then you rent it out to international students. So it's not very much different to as if like a normal case where you own a flat and then you rent out the rooms to
Yeah.
international
Yeah.
students.
But you register with the
Yeah, you have
organization,
to
and
register.
and they will find the students for you per such.
No, you find it yourself, I think. Yeah, so they can advertise it however they want, like through Facebook, through social media,
Mm.
online. So yeah, so my experience with staying at a boarding house was, I think, was great overall. Like I stayed there in my first year when I came to Australia. It was a house with 9 bedrooms,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
there were 11 students in there, including
Wow.
myself. Yeah, so we had one kitchen, but we had like I think it was like 2 or 3 toilets and
Yep.
2 bathrooms. So the facilities were plenty for
Yeah.
11 of us. And It was actually a really fun experience because you're there with a lot of other students, and
Yes.
we had students there from Vietnam, from India as well. So we would like go out and do everything together. Like we'd go grocery shopping
Yeah.
together, or go, yeah, go out
You
to
can
dinner, or like, yeah.
you can do all the bulk buy and take advantage of all the all the discount you bulk buy, for example,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like living with a big family of with other students.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it turned out to be pretty fun. But I think with the boarding house, the owner, they were responsible for the cleaning of the shared area, and they provided like the common products like toilet paper and laundry detergent. That I guess that's where the difference is between that and a private rental. So a private rental, like a fully private rental, would be you go and search for a room by yourself in say a flat or a house, and then you're fully responsible for everything. So you buy your own laundry detergent, you have your own stash of toilet paper, although you can share with like your housemates and maybe chip in $10 or something a month, and you all buy the common facilities,
Yeah.
common items together. Yeah, but it's a really great experience. And in my second and third year of uni, I was renting privately, so it was a private flat. So yeah, there's a lot of options if you want to rent privately. You can live in a flat, live in a house, live
Yeah.
in, yeah, near the beach, away from the beach. Yeah.
You got the options, and but most of the options have one thing common is mostly there's a contract, right? And that's an important part for you. When you stay in a boarding house, you have to sign a contract.
Yes, I signed a contract like as per normal. I can't remember if it's like a normal rental contract, but it was definitely a contract, and I had to pay the 4 weeks of bond. So that's another word for deposit. For I think bond is I guess a more
Yeah, bond is
Australian
kind
word
of a
for it.
special deposit, right?
Australian word, yeah,
Yeah, it's not, yeah,
yeah.
because bond is probably not a common concept in a lot of the other countries. So
Mm,
it's like a money that you pay for the landlord to keep as an insurance. It's
mm,
probably the best to explain that way. But nowadays, like the landlord have the option to either keep it themselves or lodge it with fair trading, I believe, or ten renting in governments, so they can lodge it, as in they can send it there to keep it secure. And then if when you move out, if everything is good, your room is clean, you didn't damage anything, then you get your bond back. If
mm,
not, then the landlord have options to say, I need to fix this wall, for example, there's a hole in it and it costs $1,000, and then they will take it out of your bond. And well, you either cop it, or if you don't think it's fair, then you have to lodge it with fair trading, and you have to try to get your bond back.
yeah. You definitely should try and avoid that avenue you can. So when you
Yep.
return your room, make sure that it's in very good condition, so that when you move out, you get your 4 weeks of bond money back.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I guess another situation is there's a lot of, I guess, students or adults who rent out so the owner will rent out the house or the flat, and then someone like another student or another adult will rent it from them, and then they rent it out to other students. So that's, I guess, the process of subleasing. When you're inspecting a house or a room, I mean, make sure you follow up on whether you're subleasing it from the person renting it out to you, or you're renting it out from the actual owner. Because obviously, the person who subleases it will do it at a slight profit, right? And sometimes when students sublease rooms out to other students, they may not give you a contract. So in that case, we recommend that you still ask for a written contract. It doesn't have to be like the formal contract in the formal template, but some sort of written document where you both sign, especially if you're going to pay them bond, so that you have written record that they have your bond money and they will return it back. So just something to note.
Yes, definitely. And it's not hard to get a template, right? Because I used to rent out
Mm,
1 or 2 rooms in my house myself. couple of years ago. So there's a flatmates.com.au or something, and they can provide with a very simple 2-page template, and then you can fill it out, or the sublease, the landlord can fill it out. So yeah, we recommend to still ask for a written contract, because it's important to know what is included, what you can use, what you cannot, and also like how much is a bond, and if you're gonna get your
Mm.
bond back at the end if nothing is wrong. If the sublease like landlord, the person who hold the whole house and rent it out, say, look, there's no contract, you just pay me by cash, then it's really up to you whether or not you accept that offer. But our recommendation would be to not accept the offer, because it's kind of put you at an unease and at risk of things go wrong at a later stage. You get into an argument, unnecessary argument, and just it's just a headache that you don't want as an international student.
Yeah, and especially because you can apply for private rental from a lot of ways. Like you can see ads on Facebook, on like post on all the Facebook groups,
Gumtree,
or
yeah.
yeah, even Gumtree. So just yeah, extra caution to be wary of like dodgy places. Make sure you go and actually inspect the property.
Yeah.
Although it's a bit harder if it's your first time coming to Australia and you're organizing it from overseas. So that is, yes, a little bit difficult. But say if you're already in Australia, make sure you go and inspect the property. Make sure the owner or whoever's renting it out to you seems like a reliable, good person, and suss out who will be your housemates too.
Yes.
Because you're living with other students, living with
Yes.
other adults. So it's a very new experience.
Yes, it's actually it's very important that to have that inspection in person. Or if you cannot attend, at least try to ask if a friend of you or someone you know can help you inspect the property, because you don't want to find out when you arrive and sign the contract already, and say you have you see the house has 3 bedroom but 8 students, for example.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
a lot of sublease landlord, they do it that way. They rent out a house and
Mm.
they exceed the maximum capacity of students, say, by a lot, and that's how they make their profit, unethical way. So best to avoid that by having a real inspection, and to see and just ask questions in the inspection, say how many people in the house and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the risk you take by renting privately, because all the risk and responsibility is on you to make sure that that place is a good place where you can stay. Yeah, and then next is moving on to cost. So I guess private rental is probably one of the cheaper options, because you can go from one range to the other. You can go for a really, I guess, poor quality room in a poor quality house if you're on a budget,
Yeah.
or if you have slightly more budget, then you can go for a better room in a better house. So the cost can range from anywhere from 150 to 250 a week. So that all, again, depending on the room location, the house condition, whether it's new or not. And I guess one thing is to check whether the bills are included in the rent. So some places, when they rent it out to you, they cover all the bills. For example, the boarding house. So they would cover all the water, all the electricity, all the internet. But say if you go through a fully private rental, sometimes the owner will only pay for water because that's their property, they pay for water, but you would have to arrange for electricity and internet yourself. So that's just something to be wary of, to know what the cost, what the rent you are paying includes.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of the time in the ad, you can see bills included. Then that's when and then you have to ask like, what kind of bills? So internet, electricity, water, gas as well. But a lot of the time that you have to pay the bill yourself or share between the tenants. So like 4 people in a house, and you all share the bill cost every quarter or something. Just about the cost as well. When the renting cost, you're right, it's depend on locations. And I see a lot of, say if you're in central Sydney or near the CBD, a room can get up to $350 $400 a week. So it's really depends. That's a yeah. I got a pleasant surprise, because I moved when I was in high school. I was in Sydney, and then when I went go to university, I went to Wollongong to attend Wollongong Uni. So actually, I got a pleasant surprise when I came down here. I was like, oh, the rent is almost half. Yeah, so it really depends on the location and the cities you're in.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk us through what the next option is?
Yeah, so the next options from private rental and homestay, and the last one we're gonna talk about today is university accommodations. So I believe it's more on American English when they call it dormitory or dorm.
Yeah.
In Australia, what do we just call them? What on campus accommodations,
Yeah. Or uni accommodation.
uni
Cause it,
accommodations. Yeah,
cause it can be off campus too. It could just
yeah,
be
that's right.
like
Yeah, you're right.
close to the uni, but it's not
Yes,
actually on the campus.
that's right. It can be right on campus or off campus. But either way, it's usually the most convenient and secure options for international students, especially those who have just arrived to Australia. If it's on campus, that means it's literally minutes away from your uni. So like you can wake up at 7:20 and then brush your teeth, get ready, and walk 2 minutes to the lecture at 7:30. So that'd be a dream. And also, if the accommodation is off campus, there's a reason for it to be off campus, as in it still provide you the most convenient. Say if the campus is right in the CBD, the mall. Like for example, in Wollongong, we know there's a before there used to be a off campus accommodation right in the mall. So like if you walk 5 minutes, it takes you to the Wollongong CBD, which is very convenient for those who say have part time work in the mall, for example, or just need to go to grocery shopping or something like that. As for security, is like I said, it is usually the most secure option because you normally get to check in. If it's an apartment, you get to check in with a passcode, and if it's an on-campus accommodations like a whole area, normally they have security guy to just patrol around the area at nighttime, or even if you need to give security a ring, and then they can kind of walk with you back to your accommodation in uni, to make sure you're safe at nighttime. So it's very secure in that way. As for applications, you need to apply through the university website. So whichever uni you go to that provides these university accommodations, you need to register. And normally you need to register early, as these spots kind of fill up quick, because it's more like it's like a first think about options for international students, right? For those who's very not knowing the area here, and don't have friends at all in this area, it is the first option they can think of. So there's the spots fill up quick. And as for the cost, it is usually the most expensive options compared to private rental. Yeah, but it's more convenient, and plus you get a peace of mind. As for the cost, Sharon, can you give us an indication?
Yeah, I had a quick look online and it can go up from anywhere from 150 to 400 a week. So, as Kevin just said, it's usually the more expensive option out of the three accommodation option, but you're paying for that convenience, and also you're paying for, the facilities will be a good quality. Like they have to keep their standards high if it's a uni accommodation. And then you get other benefits too. Usually there'd be social activities within the uni campus accommodation. So they might have like Christmas parties or just other parties. So yeah, it's a really good way to like
Yep.
socialize and then make friends.
Yeah.
Especially if there's international students from around the world that is also staying there, then you can make friends and then you quickly integrate into the society, and then you learn about their cultures. You can practice your English on a daily basis, and yeah, it's a good way to network, especially if you've come on from overseas for the first time and you don't know anyone here. So that's a good starting point
Yes.
to make friends and make connections.
And I would argue that that's probably the biggest benefit that you get out of with uni accommodations, is that you kind of you have to you have to blend in, you have to socialize with other people from different countries, and you have to use English daily. And I know with private rental, a lot of the time we just kind of, if we go to private rental, we just go back to our comfort zone, right? So we just a lot of the case we just renting with people from our own countries. If you're not from a country who speak English as a first language, and most likely you will speak your mother tongue, and you will not get to practice your English a lot, and that is crucial in your study journey here in Australia. Is that you get comfortable with English, and then you practice it, and you get better at it.
Mm, yeah, for sure. So I guess to summarize, so what factors overall like should an international student consider when they're picking their accommodation option?
To summarize, the factors to consider, I would say the first one is cost. So, what is your budget, and what does a rent fee cover? Does it cover meals option? Does it not cover meal? What's your budget? What you willing to pay up to? That give you a good starting point on, the range of price you can pay, and what options do you have in that range. And then the next thing I think is furnishing. So whether the rental already being furnished, or if it's not. So a lot of the private rentals say not furnished, as in it's empty and you have to bring in all your own desk or your own bed and wardrobes. So you have to consider that, because is it easy for you to do you already have your own bed? Is it easy for you to organize a move to move all this furniture into the place? When you move it, when you cause any damage to the property, that you probably have to pay later with the bonds. So that's all the thing that you need to consider.
Yeah, and that's why some places, especially like private rental, if they advertise it as fully furnished, the price of rent will be higher because you've got all the furniture there. So you don't have to worry about buying your own furniture, especially the big items like the bed and the desk where it's a big
Yeah.
hassle to move.
Mm.
It can be very convenient to get a place that's fully or partly furnished.
Yep, that's right. And also with the smaller items, such as cutlery, cooking pots, bedding sheets. But normally, to my experience, these smaller things, normally you buy yourself, because you want to use your own cutlery, you want to use your own cooking equipment, and you want to use your own bedding sheets. The next thing you want to consider is locations. Actually, it's one of the first thing you should consider. Actually, location. Is it close or is it far to the uni you're going to? If it's far, if it's not close, then what is the options for you to get the uni? Either through public transport, or you have to drive, or you can walk, or you can catch a train or catch a bus. What's the location towards the areas like the CBDs? Is it close to the CBD? Is it close to the shops? Is it close to the train station, bus stations, all that sort of stuff? So the location is probably one of the biggest things that you need to consider, because it depends on the location. It will provide you the convenience or not in your rental.
Yeah. And I guess the next thing is the room itself. Are you sharing the room or do you have the room to yourself? Because if you share a room, the cost is obviously a lot lower, but obviously you don't have that private space. So I guess that ties into the budget as well. Yeah, we should have mentioned that in the private rental is that there is an option where you can share a bedroom with another student to cut down the cost even further.
Yeah, I have my fair share, both share and private rental. I agree with the share option. Like when I went out from homestay, I go straight to private rental with a share, because I knew that was my classmate, and I share straight away. I cut the renting by half. I think from 350 to 150 a week, or so 170 a week or something. But yeah, you have to learn how to live with another person, respect their space in the room, and work around. Say if you need to study that night and then they play some music, well, I don't know, do you cope it? You just go, yeah, whatever, or do you just say, hey, I have a test tomorrow, can you turn down the music, in a nice way? So yeah, it's an interesting aspect there, where you need to consider between the cost and the convenience, and that is a good experience to have as an international student, because it makes you try to balance your options.
Yeah. And I guess leading on from that is the sharing of other facilities too in the whether it's private rental, whether it's uni accommodation, whether it's homestay, there would be some sharing of facilities involved. So that's sharing the kitchen, that's sharing the bathroom, sharing the laundry, who will do the cleaning. obviously if you go private rental, then you might have the option of having your own bathroom. Say if the house is a little bit bigger and there might be one bathroom right next door to your room, then you might be able to get the bathroom to yourself. But I guess in some sense you would still have to share facilities in all the three options. It's just to what extent do you share. Yeah, and then the next factor is how open are you to making new friends at cultures? Like, do you really want to make a lot of new friends immediately when you first come to Australia? Maybe uni accommodation is the best option. Yeah, private rental, you can still make friends as we mentioned before, but it's a bit more easier to go into your comfort zone when you're in renting privately.
Yeah, and just shut
Yeah.
yourself out, and
Yeah, just
and
close the door.
a lot of the time, a lot of people, would prefer it, at least in the initial stage, because they think they need to, like focus to get the study up to the level they want. And for a lot of academic results is really, or if not the most important aspect. So I can understand it in that way. You don't want to mingle around too much because you want to focus on the study first, and that's totally understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the next point is sort of relevant to that one is like what stage are you at in your uni course? Are you first year? Are you second year or third year? So how well do you know the city you're living in? Because maybe in the first year, as we mentioned previously, if you're applying for accommodation from overseas, you can't inspect the property as well. So maybe that's why a lot of first year students pick uni accommodation as their accommodation option, so they have peace of mind. They know it's going to be good quality and reliable. And then after that, a lot of students tend to move out in the second year, if they once they get to know the area and then they've made friends, so they will together look for private rental. But in saying that, I know friends from uni who enjoyed living on campus uni
Yes.
accommodation so much, and they enjoyed just mingling around with a lot of other students so much that they stayed at the uni accommodation throughout the whole course of their uni duration. So it really depends on you, like how you experience it, and yeah, if you like it or not.
Yeah, uni accommodations. Yes, it's a lot. It's a more like a no fuss and no worry options. Where if you have the means, if you have the finance to back you up, a lot of people would prefer to not have to worry about all that and stay. Say they will save on some costs in transportation costs as well, because such close to uni, you don't have fuel costs, you don't have public transport costs. So yeah, in a way, it is really good. But yeah, like you said, other options we mentioned, private rental and homestay, also have their own very good benefits as well. So it really depends on your factors to consider and your situations, whether you're under 18s, over 18s, and also your preference about privacy and also culture experience and all that. Yeah, so hopefully that we have given you these options, and hopefully we go deep enough with the details that you feel comfortable with any of these options in this episode.
Yeah, and we will include a link to an article we found on study.sydney, and it basically just summarizes all the accommodation options. And yeah, you can have a read of that just to get a deeper understanding of the accommodation options.
Yeah, so yeah, first episode back from the break, and first episode in 2022. Hope we did not do so bad, Chan. I hope we cover everything, and yeah, for our listeners, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. And it is just one of the episode in the series we kick off that we really want to provide these details and very relevant things area in an international student's life. And for the example, this one is accommodation. So hope you guys like it, and yeah, we have a lot more for you guys in this year, and yeah, just stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you guys. And if you haven't already, please follow and like us on Facebook and Instagram at the Koala Club Podcast. And if you're listening to us through Spotify, we would love if you could give us a rating, because Spotify now allows people to rate their podcasts.
Yes,
So
that's
please
true.
do give us a
Yes.
rating.
Yeah, please do. I already did. Five stars.
Me too.
Okay. Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
guys.